Have you wondered what financial advisors actually think about finances? This is your sneak peek at the conversations within Financial Design Studio. Michelle Smallenberger, the CEO here, will be your host as you go behind the designs.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Smallenberger, the CEO and a financial advisor here at Financial Design Studio. And today we're talking about a really fun subject, but actually a really important subject that we just keep getting a lot more questions about, which is Social Security and will it run out? So we're really going to dive deep into this topic, but I have Rob Stoll with us. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thank you very much. Good to be back on the old podcast here.
I know, it's been a while. We keep Rob really busy writing, so we have to beg and say, Rob, could you please do a podcast? Yeah, you're such a great writer. So you know him as Rob, but I know him as our Chief Investment Officer. But also, Rob, one of the things as we dig into financial plans, all financial advisors can be different. So when you're digging in, you really like the analysis of it, really digging into the why, really understanding a lot of the background of more than just what the numbers are, and which I really appreciate. And so this is one of these topics, Social Security, where there's so much more behind the scenes. So that's really what we're going to dig into, is a lot of what you've dug into just over the years. So I think our listeners are now going to hear that.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of understanding the context of anything, because it's really easy to get caught up in headlines and people saying this, people saying that. But when you really understand the history and the context of what people are talking about, a lot of times you can come to much different conclusions than what's being put out there. And Social Security is a great example of that.
Yeah, it's one of those topics where I think when it kind of seems mysterious, then it's hard to understand, which brings a lack of confidence, which is one of the things that we want to do, is we bring clarity so that you can have confidence. So that is exactly what we're doing today. So, okay, so let's just start here at the top, Rob, really just what Social Security is, kind of describing the background, some of the history, because I think that'll help us understand kind of where we're going with it today.
Yeah. So Social Security, it's really good to understand the history and context of it, because we need to understand why it's there. Like, why do we have this? We're so used to it being there that we need to understand why it's there. So if you go all the way back to the New Deal in the 1930s, Social Security was rolled out as a way to really help people who were disabled and kind of getting later in life and they couldn't work anymore. So at the time that Social Security was rolled out, the retirement, quote unquote, retirement age was 65, but life expectancy back then was like 63 or 64. So at the time, the point was, if you live longer and you can no longer work, here's a program to help you survive and eat and give yourself housing. So you flash forward several decades now, and what Social Security has become is more of a kind of a retirement program, because the retirement age, while it has gone up from 65 to 67, longevity, people are living to 78, 80 years old now. So all of a sudden, this program that really wasn't being used when it came out is all of a sudden being counted on by millions and millions of people to provide sustenance and income while they're in retirement. So really understanding that, I think, is key. Another key part of the program that I think people need to understand, and this is the design of the program, is Social Security is really designed to help people who are lower income. So the lower your income, the more benefit you get from Social Security. And what do I mean by that? We actually wrote an article like 2 years ago, I think, on this very subject. And what you find is at lower income, so if you kind of take like the bottom half of the average income in America, Social Security is designed to replace anywhere from like 50 to 65% of that income. So it's a really, really big deal if you haven't earned a lot of income during your life. When you're dealing with high income earners, it's still a big deal. It's still valuable, but the program, you actually get a lot less benefits. So for a high income earner, you might only get 20 or 30% of your income replaced by Social Security. So, those are really the two big things that I think people need to understand about the program when talking about it.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is there's kind of two different perspectives. So you just mentioned two different groups of people and how they're depending on Social Security, or maybe not depending on it, but it is a part of their plan. So what I find is interesting is people who lower income, it makes up a larger part of their income that they need to cover their expenses. What's interesting is it's more, I'm dependent on this, I need this because this is going to help supplement me and give me income. But then you have people who don't need it. They've saved a lot of money. And so now it's kind of just a part of their plan. And what I find with those people is they're actually surprised how much they're going to get in Social Security or how much it helps their plan. So it's interesting if I need it versus I'm not dependent on it. I'm surprised. And so it's just these different perspectives of, oh, wait, this is actually something I've been paying into all of my working years. And so just this reaction to how Social Security affects my plan. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, it's for even high income earners, when we do a lot of plans, we'll get Social Security and we're projecting all that out. People are getting, $3,000-4,000 plus dollars per month from Social Security, which is nothing to sneeze at when you think about it.
No.
Now, if you're used to spending $12,000 or $15,000 a month, that's not going to cover, your living expense desires too much, but it is something.
Yep.
So, that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't, really need to realize. And, another thing is, and this is going to sound weird coming from a financial advisor, but, a lot of advisors talk about the retirement crisis in America, and people just, everybody needs to be saving and socking away. And while there is truth to that, for a lot of people who have been low income earners their entire life, Social Security is probably going to be enough for them to get by when you factor in Medicare and Medicaid in certain circumstances as well. So this idea that every man, woman, and child in America needs to have this huge Roth IRA, and that's the only way you're going to make it in retirement really is not the case. And we'll get into a little bit more in a bit, but this fact is actually why I think a lot of the negative headlines around Social Security will eventually get fixed.
Yeah. Well, and it's just it's because it affects everyone who has worked. It affects everybody. I think at some level we all expect something from it. So even if we say our plan isn't dependent on it, it sure is helpful. And even someone, some of these high income earners where their assets can last, having that Social Security allows their assets to last even longer or more money to be passed on to their beneficiaries. So it is interesting how we all have some type of a response when we talk or hear about Social Security.
Yeah, I mean, every dollar that comes out of Social Security in terms of income is $1 less that you have to take out of your savings, your retirement savings. So it is a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so understanding kind of why it was created, kind of how it was created, what it's for. So I guess let's just talk directly about some of these headlines. It's going away, it's going to run out, it's dying. I guess talk to us a little about that. What's causing it? Why are we hearing these things?
Sure. Yeah, so the key to understanding this question and a lot of the negative headlines is to understand how the system works. So ever since it was put into place, people have been paying payroll taxes. So every time you get paid, they pull out Social Security and they put that in what they call a trust fund. Because what happens is, for most of Social Security's history, and I don't know the exact date this flipped, but maybe in the last decade, I think, all the income that came in, like the benefits that they had to pay out each year were actually less than the money they were collecting in terms of Social Security taxes. So the difference between that, what they were getting versus the smaller amount that they had to pay out each year, they put into what's called a trust fund, and they invest in government bonds, very safe stuff, but it's almost like a piggy bank, like that from the 1930s until maybe a decade ago. This piggy bank just grew and grew and grew. But now we have the largest generation in American history, the baby boomers, retiring. And just in the last couple of years, the amount of benefits that are being paid are actually more than what is being collected in terms of Social Security taxes. So that piggy bank, that Social Security trust fund that we hear about a lot, we're actually dipping into that piggy bank in order to pay those benefits.
Yep.
So the negative headlines we see each year, and just this past March, they came out with the Social Security trustees report. It's kind of like an annual report. Here's the state of the Social Security. Here's how it's doing. And every single year they say, hey, there's going to be a day coming up where we're going to be paying out so much in benefits that trust fund, that piggy bank, is basically going to go to zero. And so you'll see all these headlines. Social Security is going to run out of money. This is going to be it. There's not going to be any money left over after the latest update is 2034. So, not too far in the future, like 11 years from now, they're projecting that this trust fund, this piggy bank, will run out of money.
Yeah. So I think that's right there. That's what scares people is they're like, okay, 11 years. Obviously, if you're younger, if you're just starting retirement, I mean, that news to someone who's maybe 80, who's been receiving Social Security benefits and says, okay, 11 years, I'm not sure, how long I'm going to live. Again, perspective is everything. And so I think what's interesting is I kind of liken this to, I don't know how many times you've done this, but you get something in the mail and it may be like a newsletter from someone or something like the Park District or something like that. And you get it. And I don't know how many times like you actually read through something and you're like, I didn't know that. I feel like the Social Security update is kind of one of these things. There's information in there where it tells us so much where it's like, I didn't know that. So if I actually read it. So this is kind of back to what I was saying I appreciate about you is you love like reading all these details, like digging in. So in this report, like it gives us a lot of information. Okay, we're going to run out, but there's a lot more too of, okay, here's what happens after that. So kind of talk us through, okay, 11 years, talk us through a little bit about then what after that. It runs out, but that doesn't mean there's no Social Security, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is where it's, and I'm not a fan of media at all. So, I mean, the media will say Social Security is going to run out in 11 years. And people are like, well, that is really, really bad because we count on that. As I said before, millions of people, low income earners in particular, this is all they got. When you actually read the report, it is dense, but here's what happens when this trust fund, when this piggy bank runs out of money, here's what's going to happen. The entire system will go to what's called pay as you go, or pay go is kind of the Washington lingo that they use, where basically they will still pay out benefits, but the benefits will be limited to the amount of tax that they're bringing in. And when they run these projections, what they're finding is when this trust fund runs out of money, they will have enough taxes to pay about 80 cents on the dollar, 80% of the benefits that people are entitled to in 2034. So if you're a Social Security recipient getting $1,000 a month, it's 2034, the trust fund is run out, you will, instead of getting $1,000 a month, you're going to get $800. That $800 will actually decline a little bit. So the worst case, I forget which year, it's like 40 years from now. But at its worst point, the taxes will only cover 74% of the benefits that they are supposed to be paying out. So, there's good news, bad news in that. The bad news, obviously, is if it runs out and they don't fix it, then people are going to get 20 to 25% less than what they thought. The good news is it does not go to zero. So when you see these headlines saying Social Security is going to go away, it's not like you've gone from a $3,000 a month benefit to zero. You're going to $2,500 or whatever the math is on that. So it's it's not a good thing, but it's not nearly as bad as what the media will make it out to be.
Exactly. No, I think it's helpful, though, just to understand that, because this is kind of how we start to connect it to when, a new client comes in or a client is starting to consider retirement. These are now things, are real conversations, and we start with assumptions. What should we assume for income and expenses? So this is one of those income pieces where we need to know what we're assuming so that we can we need to be sure about that. So we aren't giving a plan away saying, yeah, it's going to be there 100%. So what we will often do is kind of show let's say, what if it isn't? And we've had like a few plans right in a row, new clients where they've said, I would like to see my plan without any Social Security, which makes a really big difference. But it's interesting that people are asking that. So this is where, what we hear and then how we apply that to our lives. It's interesting how we kind of see that connection and what clients ask for as we're building plans.
Yeah. And I mean, it just goes to show the power of social media or just media in general these days. I mean, you hear these things and, I look at some of these headlines and I'm like, well, come on. I mean, that's not going to zero. I know that. But I mean, a lot of people don't know that. And that's why we write a lot. That's why we have this podcast, because we get these questions that we might not think are a big deal or not really an issue, but they are an issue to a lot of people. So we want to make sure we're answering that.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to leave it right there. So it's kind of, okay, it could run out, but it's not going to run out. So it could change. Now, even factors like in 2023, we had a high cost of living increase. So are those things, so when there's like a higher COLA adjustment, that cost of living adjustment, I mean, is it factors like that or that are even depleting kind of the trust too over time that weren't necessarily factored in, do you think?
Yeah, that definitely contributes to it. So the last 2 years we had, I think 2 years ago, the cost of living increase was like 5.9%. This past year, it was over 8%. So, I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
Wages have gone up quite a bit over the last 2 years. So there has been an offset to it. But certainly the cost of living adjustments, last I ran the math, I mean, we're paying $200 or $300 billion a year more in Social Security payments than we were just two years ago.
Wow.
So, so it is a big deal, and it is kind of pulling forward the that date of when the trust fund will run out.
Yeah, interesting. No, I think that's helpful just to understand all the factors that kind of make up when the trust fund runs out, how much they actually have to pay out. And that's such a big factor of who's working, how many people are working, who's retiring, and when. It's all of those things. So it's not just one piece. So I guess if we kind of talk about, okay, well, can we save this? Can the money be replaced? Can the trust fund be built up? Any of those questions. Do you feel like there's some easy ways that this could be fixed? It's just something that isn't popular. Nobody wants to maybe fix it right now in an election year, but as we go forward, are there actually easy ways that you think we could fix this?
Yeah. I mean, this is like, the state of our political system 101 right now. The way to fix this is so easy, it's almost ridiculous. So right now, if you're a higher income earner, you'll notice on your paycheck that once your earned income gets over $162,000, you stop paying Social Security taxes. There's a wage limit. Yeah. So you don't have to keep paying Social Security taxes after a certain level. One way to help fix the system, if you raise that to $200,000, I don't know what the number is exactly, but you wouldn't have to raise it a lot in order to capture more income that has to pay Social Security tax. So that's one easy way. Another way, if I remember reading a while ago, somebody is saying if you just raise the Social Security tax rate by 0.5 point, that'll take care of the problem. There have been discussions about, well, maybe 67 isn't the right retirement age. Maybe it'll get moved up to 68 or 69. Obviously phased in over a very long period of time, but the point is, I mean, there are some very, very easy fixes. This is not like a freight train that's just going to hit us and there's going to be nothing we can do about it. I mean, there are very easy fixes. It's just a matter of who's going to make the first move. I mean, everybody in Washington knows this is going on. Everybody in both parties know the trust fund is going to run out in 2034. It's not an unknown issue. It's just a matter of the political calculations from both sides of, well, when are we going to make a big deal about this? And they're only going to do it when they think they can benefit from it. And because we're so far away from it, the political need to bring up Social Security as an issue really isn't there
because
right now.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting, because I guess of some of these solutions we're talking about, you could make everybody upset by changing everybody's paycheck by 0.5%, withholding 0.5% more. You could just make the people who are nearing retirement right now upset because you push back the age a little bit. So, it's kind of like, who do I want to make upset? Well, as a politician, you don't want to make anyone upset. So exactly what you're saying. This is why it just kind of keeps on getting pushed down the road until it actually is a problem. So
yeah. And I mean, it's I'm sure we'll get into it, but I am very, very confident they will figure this out. The last time we kind of hit this point where we had to do something to save Social Security was in the early 80s, and you had Ronald Reagan, a Republican, working with a very democratically controlled Congress in both houses at the time, and they came up in 1983. They raised the retirement age. They started taxing Social Security benefits because they had this imminent piggy bank was going to run out, and they had to do something. Yeah. So when the chips are down, they will find a solution for this. It's just, we're just going to have to endure these relentless headlines for the next several years about Social Security running out.
Yeah, as we get closer. So just don't worry. I guess the takeaway is kind of like, read this report. This is exactly what we're doing for clients. So we're reading reports like this so that we can feel confident in the assumptions we're making in their plans. And then I'm even thinking, of these tax analysis. This is why we kind of take a pay stub. We project it out for the rest of the year, because you can literally see 0 in this column once they've reached the Social Security wage limit. So now there's no more being withheld for that. But even just making sure that's happening and that they're not withholding for that. These are all of these little ways we're just making sure things are as they should be. So you're not overpaying, or that what you're going to get is going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's helpful. Okay, talk us through these few. We've done like a few plans here now where we've kind of had the plan, and then we've said, wait, let's take Social Security out and see how it looks. And I feel like we talked about this in the very beginning, but for someone who has saved money, it may not make all the difference in their plan. They might still be okay. But for someone where you're depending on this makes a much different change to your plan.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And we will run scenarios. So kind of our worst case scenario when somebody comes to us and says, hey, I want to run my plan, not, assuming the worst happens to Social Security, what we do is we just cut the benefit by 25% and say, okay, it will vary from year to year what that benefit cut is, but if we just take 25% out and project out your retirement with the savings that you have and the investment returns and expense needs and all that, we can see how that would impact it. So we will run that. I mean, we want clients to understand and feel good about their financial plan every time they get one. We do talk about the chances of this actually playing out, your Social Security benefits getting cut. In my mind, is about close to 0 as it can get. You never know in this day and age. But, right. I mean, I firmly believe, when you think about the impact that this program has in helping the poor, helping the elderly, and OPS, the baby boomers are going to be very much receiving almost all this Social Security in a decade. Yep. So, the idea that somehow these constituencies aren't going to be able to force Congress and whomever is president at the time to fix this, it just doesn't seem possible to me.
Yeah. No, and I do think like when we run a plan for people and we show, even like you're showing, like this decrease in benefit, I actually do think that it does allow people to be much more relaxed. Like they are more confident. They do feel like, okay, all right, it still looks fine. If we're running it till age 100 or 85, whatever that life expectancy is, and they see, okay, it might make a few years difference, that still gives them confidence. They could still retire and be fine. What's also interesting is some people who I feel like have said, okay, let's see it without the Social Security. One interesting thing that we talked through with a client recently was maybe before you retire, so that you can start to kind of really gain confidence in Social Security itself. This was specific to their plan. We said maybe start your benefit just right before you retire, so you actually see that retirement income coming in for a couple months of Social Security. So now you kind of have this, oh, okay, I actually believe it's a thing I can receive because I'm receiving it. And then I might be more confident, okay, now I can retire. So even just the timing of it, and let it actually hit your bank account so you feel like it's a real thing. Sometimes that's all it takes to say, okay, I actually do think this is something I'm going to get. You know what? I might as well start it now. If I don't think I'm going to get it later, then maybe you should be someone starting it sooner. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to work around this, but sometimes it's kind of just this mental belief of, in the system, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, for a lot of people, we run various scenarios of, should you take Social Security early? You can take it as early as age 62. Should you wait until full retirement age, which is 67 for most people? Or do you wait until age 70 and get a bigger benefit, if you wait a little bit? So we run all these scenarios, but as you say, sometimes for a lot of people who are retiring, particularly I think if they're in their 60s and they can take Social Security, there is a level of comfort in, when you go from working and getting a paycheck every 2 weeks to all of a sudden you're getting nothing, that is a little bit of a mental shock for a lot of people that retire. So, in the case where it does make sense, plus or minus a couple years to maybe take Social Security early, there's nothing wrong with that because, if it just helps that person kind of get over that hump of, okay, I'm retired, I'm not getting a paycheck anymore, but at least I have this other money coming in now every month that I can count on and is adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
So
right,
there is a real benefit to it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the surprising things. So someone receiving Social Security, that's another concern, I guess, when you start receiving it, now you're retired and not working. So actually seeing like these cost of living adjustments happen is probably also encouraging to realize it's somewhat or trying to keep up with the cost of those expenses.
Yeah, it's not perfect. There's a lot that can be said about the way we measure inflation here in the United States. They always, for at least until the last couple of years, they were telling us, oh, it's below 2%. It's really not that bad. It's like anyone who buys groceries or cars or, just lives and actually buys stuff knows that inflation has not been 1.5% for the last 15 years. It's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So many things are going up just at different pace. So exactly, it's which things do you pick to measure that inflation, which is essentially what they do. They pick a basket of things.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's helpful. No, I think this has been a really helpful conversation. And I'm just thinking of people that are nearing retirement, people that are in retirement, or even like younger workers, so high income earners who are in the middle of their careers, just understanding how it works. So yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to be sure that we touched on, or you feel like this is?
I guess the last thing I would say, this is obviously a topic that most older workers or people in retirement or nearing retirement are really, thinking about. But I would say, for anyone young, don't believe the lie that Social Security is not going to be there for you. It will be there. So, check your Social Security statements. You can download them online every single year. They'll give you an update on, here's how much you would get if, you kept working through your retirement age, and here's how much you would get each month. That's a really, really important thing to do, even if you're young, because while you're not going to get it for 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, that is a benefit you will get, and it will be meaningful. So understanding what that is really helpful, because the only way to kind of overcome that, if you expect Social Security isn't going to be there, is you have to save a lot more today to make up for that. And, what you don't want to do is you don't want to kind of starve yourself while you're young and healthy and raising a family and things like that. You don't want to starve yourself thinking, well, I have to because Social Security won't be there. So, just understanding that is really important.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you for mentioning that. So, you can go online. It's ssa.gov/myaccount. You do have to set up an account, so then you get yours. Yeah, they used to mail these statements. I actually heard someone recently say, I used to get them all the time, but I haven't in a while. That's because they stopped mailing them, so now you have to go online to get them. Saves money.
Yep.
So go online, you will set up an account, and then once you're logged in, you can get that PDF. So, well, thank you so much for joining us, Rob. This has been really helpful.
Yeah. No, this is great. I love these kinds of topics because I don't know, I'm a contrarian by heart. And when I hear one narrative, that people tend to believe, when dig in a little bit and you're like, well, no, that's not actually what's going on. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. So thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, I think we were in one of these client presentations recently, a couple of them, and I was like, wait a second. I just need to grab Rob and let's just go have that conversation on the podcast. So
exactly.
So natural because we've just had this several times. So thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to be sure and reference, as Rob mentioned, there are several articles we've written about this over the last few years. So Should I Count on Social Security is one of them. Social Security and cost of living increase, and then Social Security income for cost of living adjustment. So there's several articles there that you can see those. You can, again, share this podcast episode with anyone. And if you're looking for more information and you say, wait, I just need someone to help me make sure that I'm counting on, or I've got Social Security as part of my plan, what does my plan look like with all of that in it? You can check out our retirement planning page to learn more about how we as financial advisors think through these needs for our clients. So if you don't have a retirement plan, be sure to schedule a meeting with our team so we can start that today. We love working with high income earners who then move into retirement and beyond. And so all of these factors like Social Security are part of your plan today and just become more important as you move to and through retirement. So thanks for listening, and we will see you on the podcast next time.
Thanks for listening. To find any links or resources related to this episode, check out our show notes. Your host was Michelle Smallenberger, a certified financial planner and CEO. The guests featured are from Financial Design Studio, a team of experienced, fiduciary, fee-only advisors based in Chicago. Anna Lewis is the executive producer of the Behind the Designs podcast. And as always, for more information about Financial Design Studio and who we are, check out our website, financialdesignstudio.com. And final note, no content discussed on this podcast should be taken as financial advice. Financial Design Studio accepts no responsibility for your individual choices. We'll see you in the next episode.